All of us have these bags of manure that we carry around with us called our past, and the people who have done things to us, and the events and the circumstances, all of this stuff that we use and we bond to. And we bond ourselves to these wounds of our past, and we identify ourselves on the basis of these wounds. And every once in a while we set it down and we reach in there and we smear it all over ourselves. And then we wonder, why does my life smell so bad? I don't understand this.
Mark Twain said that forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it. And once I let go of that anger and that hatred and all of my attachment to the bonding that I had done with these wounds, and let go of that and cleared that out of my life, my writing began to take place at a much higher level. In fact, I wrote Erroneous Zones in very, very short time after that. I began to get myself back in shape. I began to eat better. I began exercising, got my weight down. And the people that were supposed to come into my life, like my beautiful wife, who sits here with me this evening, and all of our children, some of whom are here this evening, all of it was allowed to flow when I released that energy of negativity and blame and hatred. They say that you never die from a snake bite. It isn't the bite. And you can't be unbitten. It's in the wake. What kills you is the venom that continues to pour through you long after the bite has taken place. And that's something we have control over and we can't change. And I'd like to suggest that what happens is that many of us bond ourselves to these wounds of our past. If I were to cut my hand, just cut it, and watch it, my nature says, close up the wound. And I just have to watch it. And there's no doctor out there, there's no medicine out there that's going to heal that wound. There's a healing stream that I am connected to that will allow that wound to heal. So my nature says, close up the wounds. Don't bond to them. Don't hang on to them. Close them up. But supposing I say to myself, oh, no, you don't. There's no way I'm going to let you close up. You see, if I can keep you open, and I can go to you and say, look at this. Say, what happened? Well, look at this cut I've got. Oh, you poor thing. Look at that. It seems to be getting worse. It's getting infected. Isn't that terrible? And if you practice this kind of a mentality, when your nature says close up the wound, but you keep it open, before long you lose your hand. And after that you'll lose your arm. And the whole organism will be destroyed if you don't let your nature take over. And your nature also says, close up the wounds of your past. Close them up.
Offering compassion to those who have harmed or disappointed you is not a case for being a victim. It is instead a way of saying, I understand, I care, I forgive. But I still do not like it, and I will not tolerate being treated this way or having you think it is acceptable. The difference is not needing to exact revenge or to prove one's superiority. With mercy in your heart, you will find yourself much less distracted and disheartened by the evil behaviors that you see and read about almost every day. You will be able to send the offenders love and not become obsessed with anger, hatred, and eventually the desire for revenge. Turn your most troublesome disturbances over to God. Simply say, Dear God, I find it so extremely difficult to give mercy in this situation, and I'm turning it over to you completely. I know you will guide me in acting in the most merciful and humane way. This action will free you from your own immobilization and anger and help you to see the saint in the sinner who have just been exchanging notes with each other.
Anything that divides us weakens us. Anything. You have moved away from source. And any thought that unites us, that includes us, that is of service, any thought of spirit and spirituality that brings us together as one and recognizes the truth that all of us have come from the same source and that we are all breathing the same air and that we all came from the same place. If you want to be in balance, then your habits have to start matching up with your desires in everything that you do. And it's just a simple matter of deciding to do it in all of your thoughts. Every place that you have any thought that is not aligned, any place, Any thought.
If there is intelligence behind life, and there is every reason to believe that there is, or that there may be, and think about that for a moment. If there is intelligence behind life, and all of science points to the fact that there is some kind of an intelligence behind life, behind this body that you were hearing about in the last hour, that there's something mystical, if you will. And I brought with me just a quote from the man who won the Nobel Prize for Physics. He was Einstein's greatest teacher. He was considered the father of modern quantum physics. His name was Max Planck. And on receiving the Nobel Prize for Physics, this is what he said. He said, as a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, I can tell you, as the result of all of my research about atoms, this much, that there is no matter as such. That all matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particles of an atom to vibration and holds this minute solar system of the atom together. We must, as scientists, all assume that behind this force is the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. This divine intelligence that is behind everything that is working in this body that we are so consumed with and so concerned about, and how to keep it healthy, that there is something beyond that. One of my favorite poets once observed, he said, what if you slept? And what if in your sleep you dreamed? And what if in your dream you went to heaven and there picked a strange and wonderful flower? And what if when you awoke, you held that flower in your hand? Ah, what then? Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who wrote the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and I wonder when I ask that question, I've done it on a couple of my public television specials, to ask that question, do you really believe that such a thing is possible? Because as I wrote out last night, I said, if there is intelligence behind life, and there is every reason to believe that there is, then all of that intelligence must be innate in each creation of that intelligence. This universal mind, or this, whatever you want to call it, divine mind, the great Tao. I wrote a book 8 years ago called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, which was based on the ancient teachings of the Tao Te Ching by a man named Lao Tzu, who wrote it 2,500 years ago, 500 years before the birth of Christ. And in that great tome, some call it the wisest book ever written. It's 81 verses, and I decided to write an essay on each of those 81 verses and how to apply it in today's life. He said, the great Tao, God, soul, this matrix behind all of life, he said, it does nothing, and yet it leaves nothing undone. He said, each and every one of you are doing nothing. You're all just being done. There is something moving the checkers around in this checkerboard that we call our life, that Arthur Miller was referring to when he said, I don't know, but I probably am. And that I said, when I said to my children, I'm through writing books, not only have I written an entirely new book, which was 144,000 words that I couldn't stop writing. I wrote it all by hand, every word of it. It's why I'm sitting on this chair, because my neck went crazy. Sitting there, hour after hour, writing
about all the significant quantum moments that have appeared in my life that turned the direction of my life from where it was headed into a right turn and sometimes into an about face. And I call this book, I Can See Clearly Now. I can see clearly that the things that were taking place, when I really thought that I knew what I was doing, and something else was in charge of the whole process. One of the famous observations of one of our great humorists, Mark Twain, he said that the thing that gets you into trouble isn't what you don't know. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And there's so much of what we know for sure that just ain't so. Just like what I knew for sure that I wasn't going to be writing. Not only have I written another entire book and looked at all of these significant factors and features that were really at play, moving me about, but I've written another book on top of that I'm about 3/4 of the way through, based upon how to apply the Bhagavad Gita, the great song of the Lord that Gandhi based his life on, and how we can apply it each and every day of our life.
About a secret garden that's located inside each and every one of us, and it opens inward, and we can go there and no one can take that away from us. I think I've spent the last 40 years or so writing books just about the secret garden, about the secret place that's within each and every one of us. I wrote this out this morning. If there is intelligence behind life, and all of the science tells us that there is the matrix of all matter, said Max Planck when he received the Nobel Prize for physics, that there is a divine intelligence behind everything. The matrix of all matter has an intelligence behind it that's invisible. If there is intelligence behind life, and there is every reason to believe there must be, then all of that intelligence is innate in each creation of that intelligence. Thus, universal mind, God, the Tao, whatever you want to call it, is complete and entire within each and every one of us. All you have to do is discover it for its power and perfection to be yours. So think about that. If there's intelligence behind life, and we all know that there is, all the quantum physicists teach us that there must be, then all of that intelligence that you came from, it's the spirit that gives life, said Jesus. The flesh counts for nothing. So all of the intelligence from which you originated is within you. So that God intelligence, this grand capacity that all of us have, is within each and every one of us. The problem is that we've all been conditioned to believe something else about ourselves. One of the most controversial things that's written about in Wishes Fulfilled is this idea where I say, over and over again, that we are connected to God, we are pieces of God. Yes, you are God. That you must be like what you came from, and you came from this divine place, and within you is the capacity to heal, to transform, to make anything possible that you put your attention on. That's something that, even as Jesus said, even the least among you can do all that I have done and even greater things. It's within each and every one of us. We all have this capacity, and that's our secret garden. It's like, but we don't use it, and I'm using it right now to overcome some congestion that I've had, to overcome this neck thing, just recognizing that I have within me the power to be able to overcome those things, and here I am doing it, and have been doing this kind of thing, and been teaching this my whole life. And I would walk up Peerless Street and up to my home at 20217 Moross Road on the east side of Detroit, and all the way home I would think about Dickon and this secret garden that is in each and every one of us. Now, I'm talking about a tapestry that is in our life. I was in some kind of ascended master training of some kind from the time that I showed up here on this planet, because the intelligence that I came from, because when you trust in yourself, you're trusting in the very wisdom that created you. And if you don't trust in that and start believing what other people have told you is your dharma or your what you're to be, and you're trying to live somebody else's idea of it, one of the things I say over and over again as I wrote this, and by the way, I wrote 58 of these. I wrote 144,000 words in the next 5 months. From June, July, August, September, October, November, I wrote morning, noon, and night. And I couldn't stop. And I was writing by hand, and I think that's part of the thing that kicked off this neck thing, because and my kids all came and, oh, Dad, we're going to go do this, and we're going to do that. And I said, well, you guys all go do that. It's like a calling that is so profound and so powerful that not only did I write that book, and have we done a public television special on it, and I think that when you read it, you're going to be astonished at how powerful it is to look back at the tapestry of your life and realize that you've been in the same kind of training. You know, T.S. Eliot, the great American poet, said, "We shall not cease from exploration. But at the end of all of our exploring will be to return to the place from which we originated and to know it for the first time." He was talking about death. I'm not. I'm talking about just I think that we can return to the place from which we originated, stay within our bodies, recognize our divine nature, and access it. All we have to do is decide that this is what we want to do. And I know that I incarnated into this world to do that, and have written 41 books now on the Secret Garden.
Change from seeing yourself as separate to seeing yourself as connected to everyone and everything in the universe. And if we want to end violence in our lives and in our society, we have to learn to change our thoughts. Remember the dandelions? When I was growing up out in Michigan, we had these dandelions. The dandelions would have, at a certain time of the year, they would get all these little fuzz balls at the top of them. The yellow little flower part. I always liked the dandelions. I thought they were really beautiful. And then they'd have these little fuzz balls. Now imagine if you want to end the problem of dandelions on your lawn, and you see them all out there with all their little fuzz balls. So you go out there and you take a shovel and you turn it upside down and you start smacking all of the dandelions like this. And what do you do when you use violence to attempt to end the presence of these dandelions, which are a problem for you on your lawn? Is they all scatter. And then in the spring, guess what you got? You got more. You got new generations of dandelions. There's such a lesson in that, isn't there? There's a great lesson that when we use violence as a means to resolve our disputes, whether it's individually with each other, or whether it's in countries, or whether it's in communities, whenever it is that we resort to that kind of not seeing myself in others, and out of this kind of a consciousness will emerge those people who will ultimately begin to get this. Because if we don't get it, if we don't really get it, civilization as we know it will not survive. It will not survive. We have to learn that the people that we call enemies, no matter how horrendous they may behave toward us, there is still something of us in all of them. And we can figure out a way. Yes, we of course have to defend ourselves, and yes, we don't allow people to push us, or all of those kinds of things, but at a deeper and a higher level, Lao Tzu was asking us to go within and find that place of peace, and try to reach out to that, and help someone to make a U-turn. Those people can be reached, because they have the anchor of the universe located within them.
Embrace oneness by seeing yourself in everyone you encounter. Rather than having judgmental thoughts about those whom you regard as separate or different, view others as an extension of yourself. This will diminish self-importance, and it will unite you with what Lao Tzu calls the primal virtue. Letting go of ego-dominated thoughts lets you sense the oneness that you share with others. Thus you give yourself the opportunity to feel a part of the all-embracing Tao. Practice inner awareness whenever you feel yourself about to criticize anyone or any group. News reports designed to encourage your sense of separateness or superiority in relation to others can be a perfect time to do this. Find yourself as one of them. In situations where you're expected to hate an assumed enemy, stop yourself from these judgments and walk an imaginary mile or two in their shoes. Do so with all forms of life, even the plant world. See yourself in everyone and all creations, noting the Tao in this simple observation, we are the world. And secondly, take pleasure from what you possess without being attached to these things. Let go of your identification with your stuff and with your accomplishments. Try instead to enjoy what you do and all that flows into your life simply for the pleasure of doing and observing the flow itself. You literally own nothing and no one. All that is composed will decompose. All that is yours will leave and become someone else's. So step back a bit and allow yourself to be an observer of this world of form. Becoming a detached witness will put you into a state of bliss while loosening your tight grip on all of your possessions. It is in this releasing process that you'll gain the freedom to live out what the Tao is always teaching by example. Do the Tao now. Today, practice seeing oneness where you've previously seen two-ness or separation. Feel the invisible energy that beats your heart and then notice it beating the heart of every living creature all at once. Now feel the invisible energy that allows you to think and sense it doing the same for every being currently alive. Contemplate these words from the Gospel of Thomas. His disciples said to him, "When will the kingdom come?" And Jesus said, "It will not come by looking outward. It will not say, 'Behold this side,' or 'Behold that one.' Rather, the kingdom of the Father is spread out upon the earth, and men do not see it. Today, know that practicing oneness thinking will help you see that kingdom."
So many people ask the question when they want to live a life of meaning, how can I do it when I'm around so many people who are operating at lower levels? You've missed the point if you're asking yourself that question. If you're living with somebody, a spouse, for example, family members, people that you work with, neighbors and so on, who are living at lower levels of energy than you cannot be dragged down by their low energy. That's not possible. That's not how the universe works. The reason that you feel dragged down is because you join them in their energy. You become within yourself what they are. In other words, the sentence, "You make me angry, you make me depressed by your behavior," really says that I see your depression, I see your anger, I see your hatred, I see your prejudice, and I'll have some of that too, and I'll hate you for hating me. And I'll be angry at you for being angry at me. Or being around you so depresses me because you're so depressing that you cause me to be depressed. That isn't the case at all. It's because that person's depression is something you decide you'll align with. Now, if you take the reverse, if you take Jesus, who would walk amongst the prostitutes and would walk amongst the thieves, he didn't say, "I know, I'm not going to go over there and talk to those thieves. You know, they took my sandals the last time. I'm not having that happen to me again. You know, it's not, and I don't want to be around those hookers because, you know, they're going to be tempting," and so on. He didn't do that. When he would walk among the thieves would no longer want to steal. Don't you remember on Golgotha? At the crucifixion? He was between two thieves. Both of them were redeemed by being in his presence. Even the least among you can do all that I have done, and even greater. That's where you have to be. You have to be in a place, and remember that no amount of your depression is going to undepress somebody else. See, mothers know this. I watch this with the mother of my children, Marcy, a woman I love very, very much. And I would watch her in the middle of the night. I would be laying over here and she'd be here and the baby would cry. And instead of her saying, like so many people speak about, "You know, that crying really just upsets me and it really upsets me. Why do you keep crying? It's like, you know, you're just doing it. You're upsetting me. You're making me upset." She didn't do any of that. She didn't say that babies crying would make me depressed. What she would say is, I will bring my high energy of love and healing and feeding to you, and this will help you to raise your level of happiness. And it always worked. For me, a surly waiter is a wonderful challenge. My kids will tell you that. If I get somebody in there and you can tell that they're in a hurry, they're not going to be a little bit rude, they've been rushed and all of that, I know I can turn this person around. And I'll even make it a contest. Say, just watch. It's going to happen. I'm going to get this person turned around. And all you have to do is say to them, I know you're having a tough time tonight, and you probably didn't want to have any more, but I said, you are so lucky tonight. You got somebody who came here to make your life as good as I can possibly make it tonight. Is there anything I can do to make this waiting experience happy for you? What's your name? Where'd you come from? You have an accent? What is it like where you live? And within minutes of just elevating my awareness and being happy and letting them know that this is going to be a pleasant experience for them. And I do this, before you know it, they're bringing you free desserts. We don't have to pay for anything. Here's a complimentary pass. Come the next time. By the way, my mother works over at this place. Would you like to get a massage? Those kinds of things happen all the time. When you get your ego out of the way, when you dissolve your connection to this gross worldly world of conflict, and begin to just say, I can turn this around. The lady who cleans the toilets. Now, to me, anybody who in my life cleans toilets for me and changes my bedding and makes my room nice, that's an angel. That's not somebody that I deserve to disrespect. That's an angel who's come in and willing to serve me and work for very little. That's always, for me, that's $100. I seek her out and I just say, I just appreciate you. And I do this before I go to sleep. I do this before I even take the room. And it's just, a $100 bill to me is a piece of paper. For her, and it isn't even what it does for her financially. It's like what you do is you take people that she looked surly, she looked angry, she looked like she didn't want to be in there, she looked like just another light white howly in here who's I've got to deal with. She was a lady from Mexico, and she just looked like she didn't. And when I just took her over and I put my arm around her, I said, you know what? I am so happy that you are here to help and serve me, and I just want to express my gratitude to you. You can take every incident of people who are operating at levels that keep them tied and connected to the gross worldly realm, and you can shift it. You can shift it. Because you practice a life of meaning is one in which you elevate your awareness to such a place that no matter who enters this realm, if they don't come with love, they don't get in. They don't get in. Inside of this shell of a body, this thing that I live in, inside here is my inner organs. And inside of those organs is an invisible intelligence. And inside there, in this little chamber inside of me, there's a sign that says, do not enter unless you come with love. So you can insult my body. You can be angry. You can even do things to my insides. But in here, where I live, do not attempt to enter unless you come with love. That's all I have in there. And you can do this.
Right now, as you're driving or listening or wherever you are, and you think about all the people in your life you have any conflict with, all of them, all right? If it's your mother about something that happened when you were 2, if it's your neighbor, if it's your boyfriend or your wife or anybody, just kind of list them in your mind from the people that you hate the most, that you have the most trouble with, down to the ones who just annoy you. And you find out who all these people are, and you send them all love. All right? See, it's easy to send love to the people who smell good. It's easy to send love to the people who do the things you're supposed to do and who are nice to you. All right? That's not a test of love. When Christ was on the cross and someone threw a spear into his rib, his reaction was, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Forgive them. You take and you do that, and you send that out. And every time you get hate in your life or anything,
you practice sending out love to that person. Even if it's somebody who's being nasty to you on an airplane, or somebody at a bakery who's stepping ahead of you, or whatever. And you practice letting people in on the freeway and getting the hate out, the anguish out, the wanting to get ahead of somebody else, the wanting to prove you're better than somebody else. And you make that a way of life, okay? So that means you're filled up with love, and you're giving love away. Then love starts coming back into your life, and you become free, because it's like that hate that you harbor inside of you is a poison that's worse than a cancer, and it's worse than any alcohol. It never goes away. It just continues to eat at you. And until you are able to do that, you can't experience no-limit living or self-actualization or whatever you want to call it. I have to do this in my own life. I do it all the time. I had someone who was suing me, and they wanted to just take advantage of the position that I'm in life and to make some money off of it. And for 2 years, even as recently as 3 or 4 years ago, I was still mad about that and mad at this person. How could they do that? And who was this attorney that took this case? And how dare they? And I fought it and all of that. And all I got out of it was being right, a big legal bill, and months of anguish and pain. Then when I took this person and I began to send this person love and say that this is just what they want to do. See, that's the test. That's to see what you're made out of. There's a blessing in there. Try to find the blessing in that pain and stop telling yourself that it shouldn't be happening. It is. And I started doing that, and in a month's time, the lawsuit was dropped. I started being much more productive. My writing improved. My complexion improved. I began to feel better as a human being. I could walk down the beach, and my secretary said, you have a lilt almost to you. It's like you're almost walking on air, when all of that stuff was finally sent away. I have people who owe me money, who haven't paid it back over the years. And you think about that, and you start getting really mad. How dare this person? I lent them money, and that's stealing, and they're taking my money, and they said they would. I send them copies of my books now. And I've dropped the loan. I've forgotten about them. I don't need the money. I don't believe in not paying your bills back. I pay them as soon as they come in. But some people are in a place where that's where they have to be still. I don't want to be owned by their behavior. If I'm upset because they refuse to pay money back to me, their refusal to pay money back to me is the source of my upset. I'm allowing somebody else's behavior, which is anathema to me, to control my life at this moment. I don't want that. I don't want to do that. How can I stop from doing that? Only one way: forgiveness. You got to forgive it. You got to let it go. You don't have to forget. You just have to let it go. You don't have to call them up and tell them. You don't have to send them flowers or books if that's not what you want to do. You have to let it go. And when you let it go, that's called non-attachment. You are no longer attached to it. And when you're not attached to it, then you're free to be the creative genius that you are. And until you do that, you have to do that with everyone in your life. That's a principle that works so magnificently. I'll give you another good example. I had dinner Friday night with a man who was going through a horrible divorce. Horrible divorce. He's an attorney, and his wife wants half of his law practice, and she wants the children, and she wants all of his money, and apparently she had an affair, and then he found out, and they had this beautiful marriage, and now they're just going through all this hatred. And you could see the tears in his eyes. You could see the anguish in him. You could see that he had aged. This had been going on for 3 or 4 months. He had aged 10 years in 3 or 4 months, full of pain. And he wanted to spend the whole night telling me how right he was and how wrong she was. And he kept telling me that she had no right to do this, and how dare she treat me this way. And you know that she even left letters there, and she was seeing him, and she actually brought this man over to my own home. And he said, so what do you think? I said, you need to be right, don't you? And he said, well, I don't need to be right. What do you think of that? I mean, does she have a right to do any of that? I said, yes. What do you mean, yes? I said, she did it. You can't undo what she's done. Well, he said, what do you think I should do? Do you think? I said, I think you should forgive her. He said, I already did that. I already told her that, and she didn't. I said, no, I don't have to tell her anything to forgive her. I think you should just let it go. What are you defending? You look 10 years older than you did 4 months ago. You're so racked with pain that you can hardly get up in the morning, and your practice is all going to hell. You are depressed. Your blood pressure is going up. You're not eating. You're losing weight much too quickly. And you're suffering. And you're suffering because you're not willing to forgive her. And I said, it has nothing to do with her. I said, this is your test. And I wish I could get inside your head and let you know that until you are willing to send her love for having behaved in a way that you find so horrendous,
that until you're able to do that, I said, eventually you'll do it, because otherwise you won't survive. The organism cannot survive. Obviously, you're killing yourself right now. It's just a slower process. It's going to take a little while. And until you stop killing yourself, that sooner or later you're going to have to do it. So why not choose sooner and just forgive her? You don't have to remarry her. And he said, well, what about the money and all that? I said, how much does she want? And he listed it. I said, give her that and a little more. He said, what? She wanted. I said, just give her more. You'll get it back. You will. It'll come back to you. Give her more. Well, and I said, and pay it in advance. Give her the money in advance. Let her know that you are not interested in being married, if that's what it is, and that's fine, but that you're not going to carry this around. And practice it, and practice it. And you will find a serenity and a beauty and a peace in your life that you never thought could be there before. You never believed that it could be there. And it's right there. It's right there for you. All you have to do is forgive. All you have to do is understand that she's a human being and she made a mistake. You haven't. You haven't made a mistake because she got caught and you haven't, or whatever. It's like, let all of that go, and you will find so much enrichment in your life, because now you won't be using up your present moments to convince yourself how right you are. It won't be important anymore. Being right is not necessary any longer. Just being happy is. And one of the great secrets of the universe is that there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. You must carry that around inside of you.
Okay, this shift, this movement from ambition to meaning, from the morning to the afternoon of your life, generally it's preceded by what we call a quantum moment. Sounds strange perhaps to use a term like that, but quantum moment really refers to the characteristics of what it is like when you have what Maslow called a peak experience. The first of these qualities, there's four of them. The first of them is that it's very vivid. The second quality or characteristic of these quantum moments is that it's a surprise. And the third characteristic of these quantum moments is that they are benevolent. They always feel good. The fourth and final quality is that it's enduring. That is, it isn't just something that comes and then goes and it's out the window. It lasts with you forever. For example, I left drinking behind in my life 21 years ago. And I couldn't even imagine that I could have given it up, because I'd always had 2 or 3 beers every single day for the previous 10, 15, 20 years. I couldn't even remember a day when I hadn't. And I knew that I had to make that change. And it was 4:05 a.m. in the morning. I could remember the clock when it turned. I woke up, and there was like a breeze in the room, something that I'd never experienced before. The smell of roses. This was 21 years ago now. I can tell you what was hanging on the closet, the hook that I had there. On the mirror there, I had a cartoon that I had there. I can still see that thing exactly as if it happened this morning. The vividness of this is something that I've never ever been able to forget. I can remember how surprised I was at what was happening at that time. It was almost as if some kind of force had taken over, and I was just amazed by it. It's like when the moment is right, when you are in a different state, in a different place in your life, exactly what is supposed to happen will happen for you. The low points in your own life, these times when you think that nothing could go any worse, oftentimes are the things that we need to propel ourselves to a higher place. Let me give you an example. The night before that moment that I just described to you, I had taken my entire family, 5 children, and my wife, and we had all gone to this restaurant. And like I always did, every single time I went to a restaurant, I ordered not just 1 beer, but 2. And that was so that in case the waiter wasn't there when I wanted my second one, I would be able to have it. And the waiter said to me, "Oh, excuse me, sir." He said, "I'm sorry, but I can't serve you alcohol." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, last night one of our waiters served someone who was underage, and we had our license suspended." I said, "Come on, we're getting out of here." And I made each one of my children get up, get back into the car, strapped into their car seats and so on. My wife, who, God knows, had so much to do, and it was such a hardship for her. But it didn't seem to matter to me at that time, because I wanted to have my beers, and I was making myself more important than everyone else. And we drove off and went to another restaurant. And I can remember thinking that night as I went to sleep how ashamed I was. My wife tried to talk to me a little bit about it, but I would have none of it. I was right, and that's just what the ego always makes you. It makes you right. And that night, that experience that I had at 4:05 a.m. the next day, not only did it get me off of alcohol, it probably saved my life. It transformed my life in so many different ways.
Once you're in that state of God realization, you'll understand things like your intuition. That is that inner calling that says, go this way instead of that way. Try this. Don't be afraid of that. Get rid of the fears that are so dominating your life. As Anita talks about fear, and what a thing it was that created the cancer in her life, which allowed her to almost come to a place of dying. You'll discover things like synchronicity, that you have a thought and all of a sudden what you place your attention on begins to manifest and arrive in your life. You'll discover that those thoughts are not just things that are just our happenstance. There's no happenstance in this entire universe. It's all held together by a divine light. And one of my favorite readings I'd like to share with you is from the life and teachings of the masters of the Far East. It said, it has been clearly stated that life lived by the average individual is hypnotic. That is, the majority of men and women are not living life as it was intended at all. Not 1 in a million feels the freedom to live what he inwardly feels he should live. He has come under the world's opinion of himself, and this opinion is what he obeys rather than the laws of his own being. In this respect, and to this degree, he is living under an hypnotic spell. It's like hypnosis. He lives under the delusion that he is a mere human being living in a merely material world and only hopes to escape it when he dies and goes to what he calls heaven. This is not the determination intended in the plan and purpose of life. Obedience to one's inner nature, the expression of life as he instinctively feels it ought to be expressed, is the very foundation of the life which the masters reveal as the only true mode of living. That is very powerful awareness, that you are not this body that you're in, this body that comes and goes. You are the invisible divine intelligence within, the same intelligence that allows a clay pot to exist. And finally, from the Masters of the Far East, the second volume, the moment you become free from the belief that you are mere human beings, subject to human laws of life and death and the limitations which human beings have imposed, that moment you will see that you are free from all human limitations and may become sons of God, if you will. The moment you realize that you are divine, that you are free from all limitations and possessed of the strength of divinity, and you know that this divinity is the place where being comes most directly in contact with God, man is then beginning to see and know that this divinity is not something to be injected into each other from without. He is beginning to know that it is the very life of each and every person, your essence, the light within you.
Everything that's in the universe vibrates. Everything. So we've got a microphone here, and if you take this microphone and you look at it under a real strong microscope, you'll see that it's alive. It's a dance. It's got electrons in it, and they're all moving very fast. But they're moving at such a speed that the naked eye perceives them to be solid. They're vibrating at what we call just below the speed of light. So it appears to be solid. But we know that it isn't solid. They're just vibrating at different levels, and where we stand, what we see, everything that we see appears to, some things appear to be solid, some are fluid, but we know that everything vibrates, right? So there's a vibration in the universe. And a lot of it we can't get at, but it doesn't mean it's not there. We can't get a hold of it. And so you look at just various vibrational levels that are in the universe.
Think of the relationships that you're in right now. All the relationships that you're in. Your husband, your wife, your children, your grandparents, the people that you work with, and just close your eyes just for a moment and understand they're not here. You are here alone right now. What is it that constitutes the relationship that you have with everyone else in your life? Just thought. That's all. It's just thought. What is it that constitutes everything that has happened to you up until this moment right now? Thought. Wispy thoughts. You can't get a hold of them, you can't grab them, you can't smell them, you can't experience them. You think about your wife or you think about your child, or your husband. And you understand that when you see another human being, what you are seeing is thought. You are experiencing everyone that you experience through your mind. Not through your body, not through your mind. They're not here. And yet they are, aren't they? They're not here. And yet you're in a relationship with them, aren't you? Of course you are. But they're not here. You don't have them. You don't have any form. Everything you experience in life is thought. It's thought. And the beauty of that and the glory of this is that thought is yours to do anything you want with. And when you use your thought, which is your whole experience of everything on this planet, when you use your thought to violate the principles that hold the whole system together, which is love, which is harmony, which is cooperation, harmony with the component parts of who you are in cooperation with the parts next to you and the ones next to you and so on, that when you use your thought in this way, you can transcend your form and you can transcend anything else that gets in the way of your life being exactly what it ought to be, that is, its perfection, its fellowship with the perfection of the universe, by simply thinking as you are, in the perfection that you are. And that's all it takes. There's no more magic to it than that. You change your thought, which is your experience of everything, the way that you think. When the pureness of my thought, that is, when I stopped judging myself as a writer and worrying about how the words came out, and stopped being concerned about whether I sold books, and stopped being concerned about what other people were thinking of it, and just became the I am that I am, and allowed my thinking to be only love, I sat down to write Icus, and it was magic, real magic. A transcendent human being can be any miracle. And every one of you have that capacity within you to be any miracle that you want as soon as you unclog yourself of the way that you use your thought.
How can I apply the awareness of these thoughts and how I use my mind to make my life all that I want it to be? To bring into my life the things that are important to me, to improve the quality of my relationships, to have the success and so on that I think that I'm entitled to. And it's really getting to the point where you know that every thought that you have has a potential for coming into your life, for coming into form. You start to get real cautious about having anything in your mind that isn't going to work for you. And you begin to question why you would keep any of those thoughts.
And this is one of the most difficult things for people to grasp and understand, that if you become what you think about all day long, and what you think about all day long is what you don't want or what you don't like, you will act upon what you don't want, because you can only act upon your thoughts. And what you don't want will continue to show up and manifest into your life. You cannot manifest thin from I hate being fat. Because if you hate being fat, your attention, your energy is on hating being fat. And you will then create more hating being fat into your life. You cannot manifest abundance from I despise being poor. Because the despising of being poor is your thought, you will attract more despising of being poor into your life. You'll have to act upon what you think about. And it gets worse. You cannot attract or manifest into your life what you want if your thoughts are on what always has been. And that's the wake. And that's your personal history. If you don't have a story, you don't have to live up to it. And if your thoughts are on what always has been, and you use this as a reason why you can't attract into your life what you want, because after all, it's always been this way, then even if you are really angry at the way it's always been, and your thoughts are on how angry you are at the way it always has been, what it always has been will continue to show up in your life because you become what you think about all day long. So you don't look and put your attention on what always has been, you give that up. And again, you shift not just to what you want, because if your thoughts stay on just on what you want, then you'll create and manifest more of wanting. What you want to do is put your attention on what you intend to create with passion, as long as it's motivated out of love and kindness and all of the things that will produce strength, which is between 20,000 and 100,000 cycles per second. Love, kindness, forgiveness, the things I'm going to summarize with. When you're really ready and you say, God, I am willing to turn it over to you. I'm willing to accept any guidance, any help that you are willing to send me. I now start becoming open to the teachers who are going to show up in my life. And they'll show up in the form of a little child. I had a woman tell me one day that her 10-year-old daughter came home with a girlfriend. And the little girlfriend said to her daughter, I didn't know your mommy was fat. And she said, that was my teacher. I'd been thinking about how tired I was of being overweight for all of these years and carrying around this extra, and all of I'd just been tired of the baggage. And this little child who just came into my house for the first time said it. She said, I went out, I lost the weight, I knew what I had to do. And it was gone. She said, I've never put it back on since.
Is rewrite your agreement with reality. Like you rewrite it. Because you've been programmed yourself to have an agreement that says who you are is what your tribe has dictated or what other people have told you or your limitations or what can and can't be done. I go out in the backyard and tell my kids I'm going to make it rain. This whole idea of just getting quiet, going to that place within yourself and rewriting it. I have a wonderful little summary of how we change our life. Some of you have heard this, I'm sure. It's called, it's written by Portia Nelson. And she wrote a book about this, about the sidewalk, the hole in the sidewalk. And she said she was given a 5x7 card at the end of a seminar, such as this. And she was asked to write down the 5 chapters of her life on a 5x7 card so she don't get too wordy, all right? And she said, here are the 5 chapters of my life. And this is really a wonderful summary of it. She said, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault. And it takes me forever to find a way out. Chapter 2 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. But it isn't my fault. And it still takes me a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. And I get out immediately. Chapter 4 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. Now, great? And I think walking down another street is what we're talking about, not just individually, but collectively and as a people.